Hi there. Just a very, very hasty, real, hot of the press um, video. Uh, as many people have realised on social media, the Scottish Government's ending conversion practices in Scotland. A Scottish Government consultation has been released for public consultation, and it involves the idea of coercive or abusive practices of trying to change someone's sexuality. Now, just as a disclaimer, footnote, so to speak, in the psychotherapy world, most organisations, therapists, kind of agree to the idea that no one offers services where they proclaim to be able to change someone. Someone comes along and says, we can change you. It's always been kind of regarded as a kind of idiotic thing to say, to be honest, because, I mean, even when it comes to ideas of curing people of unhappiness, therapists shouldn't even really do that. You know, the idea that you can cure depression, or I can cure this and cure that, that's not how a more psychoanalytic thinking goes really. So the kind of claims of being able to convert someone to a different state is a bit of a crazy notion, you know, and it's not something that most so-called sane therapists would abide by. But and so, and you know, and a lot of the sort of illegal practices, or practices that proclaim to be changing people's sexuality, are illegal anyways. You know, electric shock treatment and all this sort of stuff. But this document is seriously flawed. Seriously flawed. I think it's been poorly written. I'm going to explain why. Poorly written in such a way that it's dubious about its legality. I think this is going to be another gender recognition bill flop. You know, when they wanted to be able to enable people to get a gender recognition certificate, and it was thrown out by the UK government, and the courts dealt with it and said it was a lot of nonsense. I think this is similar. First of all, the expert group who were working on this, they were all biased. They all want the ban. They all want this criminalisation of anyone attempting to venture on a path of changing their sexual orientation or lifestyle or habit, so to speak. I mean, I'm reading from this from the summary document. It's just a bit short. It's about 40 pages, but I'll just give a few quotes, and I think it's very interesting. They said consultation is a central part of the Scottish policy-making process. Of course, this is for the public, but how much will they be listening to what the public are saying? As so often has been shown recently, the Scottish Government do public consultations but ignore everything that's said. So at point 6 in part 1, this is the summary document, page 3, the responses will be analysed and used to help inform policy. Of course, by who? How will they be analysed? And will they have any input from impartial, unbiased people? It's very dubious if that's the case. Point 7. The Scottish Government reaffirmed its commitment to introduce a bill on ending conversion practices in Scotland, including sexual orientation and gender identity. But of course, this is an important point. The Scottish Greens, the SNP, the Scottish Government are quite okay with conversion, to gender conversion. You know, they have the Gender Identity Clinic, the Maggie Chapman, I'll leave the link in below, on a LBC interview. It's basically saying that, you know, children should be able to change gender. So certain conversion practices they're very, very happy with. So they're not against conversion. They're not against conversion, but it's very dubious whether a child can change gender. I mean, the idea of changing gender is a very dubious thing, anyways. But a child, I'll go into reasons why it's a ludicrous claim, especially from her, considering what this document says. So the expert advisory group on ending conversion practices, this is point 9, page 3, was set up in March 2022 to advise the Scottish Government on its approach to ending conversion practices. So, I mean, straight away they had a bias. I mean, they wasn't like, should we? Because as I said, in the psychotherapy world, no one kind of converts people. People are free to live how they want. There's no coercion of like, if you come along and you'll have to change your sex. So this is part 3 on page 5 is really getting in the meaty stuff here. This is my big thing. And I might do another video on this because it's just so hasty, but it's because it's so hot in the social media. Point 12. This is really crucial, and no one's mentioned this. Conversion practices are harmful. Well, they are promoted with an ideology that views LGBTQI+ identities as wrong and believes they can be changed. This legislation aims to protect people from the harm of conversion practices. There's a big problem with that claim. Now, no one's saying anyone with LGBTQ community has to change. People can live how they want. We live in a kind of world where people are allowed to engage in what they want. They may engage in harmful practices. It might be harmful lifestyles or whatever. It's at the end of the day, it's their choice. But anyways, this idea that they don't believe that anyone can change. So the whole document starts off with the premise that people do not change and cannot change, and to assume so is wrong. But what about the people who have changed their lifestyle? What about people who have changed their sexual existence, their sexual life? I mean, this is a book here. This was a book written called The War on Psychotherapy by Christopher Doyle. He was a gay man who found Christianity, found God, faith in God, and through the grace of God, changed his sexual life. I mean, he's now married. He's got 5 children. This was written in, what year was it written in? 2019. Now, in this book, and there's lots of other examples as well in the literature, there are thousands of examples of people who have changed their sexual life. It's through faith, through God, for example. I mean, in the general psychotherapy world, you may get a bisexual person who wants to be exclusively homosexual because it's, if they're in a committed relationship, in a same-sex committed relationship, and their bisexual proclivities, so to speak, are harming the relationship, there may be a kind of desire to be exclusively committed into the same-sex relationship, and people do change like that, and some people may be exploring different ways of being sexually, and thinking about it and struggling with it, and people can find their way. So, but this idea that uh, people can't change, uh, especially in the world of faith in God, uh, people do change. So they're not including these people in their plans for this ban, you know. But what's very interesting is, of course, they say people can't change sexuality, but people can change gender. Now uh, this is very, very contradictory. So you can't change your sexuality, but you can change gender. And according to people like Maggie Chapman, you can change gender as a child. So uh, that's that. So I think. Oh yes, this is point 17. This is fascinating. The question, the sort of statement is. This is page 5 of the summary document. What is the scale of conversion practice in Scotland? Due to the often private nature of conversion practices, evidence is often based on self-reporting. The UK government's 2017 National LGBT Survey identified that in Scotland 7% of LGBT respondents had either undergone or been offered conversion therapy. Transgender people were targeted the most. I don't know where they mean that. Were transgender people targeted by the government through the transgender ideology in schools? Is that what they mean? I doubt it. Uh, Transgender people were targeted the most, with 10% of transgender respondents having either undergone or been offered conversion therapy. What, by the government, by NHS clinics? I don't know what they mean here. Across the UK, faith organisations were the most likely group to have conducted conversion therapy, as indicated by 51 of the respondents. But if you go back to point 12, because this is based on the premise that people can't change, and people of faith exist in the world who have changed. So, straight away, this is an attack on faith. Make no mistake, this is an attack on faith. So, this is part 4, defining conversion practices for this legislation. The intention to change or suppress a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. Point 22. Our proposals are informed by legislation and the definitions used by different bodies and in other countries. We consider that core to the definition of conversion practice is a purpose or intention to change or suppress another person's sexual orientation or gender identity. Well, will this bill be targeting the Scottish Government because of their transgender policies, which introduced the idea that you can be a different gender? Is it not a form of conversion or coercion? Because in a school, very impressionable young children will be listening to this and listening to the authority of the teacher. It could be construed as a form of coercion. And late in point 24, we believe that any effort to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity is harmful, regardless of how an individual identifies. This includes change efforts directed at those who are heterosexual or cisgender. The legislation will be clear that the provision of medical care by a healthcare professional relating to a person's gender identity is not a conversion practice. So, a a healthcare professional offering transgender conversion is not a conversion practice. The legislation does not include non-directive and ethical guidance and support for a person who might be questioning their sexual orientation or gender identity, whether that is provided by a healthcare practitioner, a family member, or a religious leader. The distinction is that individuals must be allowed to come to their own decision, whatever that may be. So, informed consent. We'll go in later in this document and I'll show you why it's contradicted. So there's a whole package of proposals regarding making it criminal offences, and people have been talking about that already in quite detail about criminalising people for parents who obstruct someone's child's sexual identity, gender identity, and then there's criminal offences offered. There's civil protection orders, which are like they're almost. I won't go into detail, but it's almost written like pre-crime that one may be at risk, and they've outlined how to get councils or the police to do a kind of risk assessment on certain people in society, i.e. churches, for example, who may be very biblical and kind of sola scriptura, adhering to scripture, the Bible, which is kind of very strict on sexual sins, fornication, sex outside marriage, things like that. So, will a church which preaches against bisexual, polyamorous groupings, because they'll say that, sex within marriage is the best way, will that be regarded as some sort of crime or civil disorder, and the church could be shut down? So I won't go into all the criminal details, the proposals. This is interesting. Offence of engaging in conversion practice. Intent. Mental element of the offences. This is page 13 of the summary document. Point 39. Most criminal offences have a mental element which relates to what is in the mind of the perpetrator in undertaking a criminal act. For the offence of engaging in conversion practices, we propose that the relevant conduct must be undertaken with the intention that will result in the change or suppression of the sexual orientation or gender identity of the person against whom it is directed. What is in the mind of the perpetrator? So if a pastor or a priest prays for the relinquishing of powers and principalities bearing upon people, making them engage in what a Christian church would regard as sexual sin, this seems to be construed as a criminal offence. You've seen in England people being arrested for praying outside in the street, outside abortion clinics, silently praying, not allowed, in their mind. So I presume that this bill will go down that kind of that road. So, this is a harm, requirement for harm, page 13, 49. We intend for the criminal offence of engaging in conversion practices to address conduct which is sufficiently serious and harmful. We therefore propose that the offence will include a requirement that the act or course of behaviour has caused harm to the victim, either physical harm, psychological harm, or a combination of both. Psychological harm includes fear, alarm, and distress. Acts that do not cause harm to the victim will not be criminalised. But if someone goes along to a church, for example, and is distressed or alarmed by what a pastor's saying about the nature of sexual sin, if one is in a kind of Christian context, will this be flagged up as some sort of crime or a civil disobedience? It means a civil order, cease and desist, stop preaching the Bible. I think that they've also at point 47 earlier on page 13 as well. It says the legislation will include examples of the types of behaviour that would be considered to be coercive in the context of conversion practices. This includes acts that are controlling, threatening, and humiliating, intimidating, manipulative, or pressuring. So, no doubt, if someone is alarmed or distressed by the preaching of a preacher, pastor, priest, one could say, well, I feel distressed and alarmed because I feel that I'm being humiliated because of the way I live my life, and it feels like I'm being pressured to change due to this ideology that's being spoken, the Bible. Offence of engaging in conversion practice. For the avoidance of doubt. We propose, this is point 51 on page 15, we propose to include specific avoidance of doubt provisions to be clear that some behaviour will not be carried out with the requisite intention and so are not included in this legislation. These include health care or medical treatment provided by healthcare professionals in the course of their employment. This includes medical treatment provided in line with relevant ethical and legal rules and guidelines, and in medical treatment that aligns a person's physical characteristics with their gender identity. So again, there's a real bias towards empowering transgender conversion, it seems like. Oh dear, it's just gobbledygook. Well, offence of engaging in conversion practice, point 55 on page 15. We propose the following sentencing range for convictions under this offence. Imprisonment for a term not exceeding 12 months, or to a fine not exceeding the statutory maximum, £10,000, or to both. On conviction, on indictment, solemn procedure, imprisonment for a term not exceeding 7 years, or to an unlimited fine. Now, this is the key part. A lot of people will be talking about criminality, offences. That's not really my main beef with this document. It's this defence of consent in a criminal offence relating to conversion practices. And this is key. Evidence suggests that many people who undergo conversion practices agree in some way to do so. For example, they may agree to attend a program of therapy. However, those people who apparently willingly engage in or actively seek out conversion practices are often where is it? Oh, it's that place. Are often driven by external pressures and coercions, imbalanced power dynamics, or being under the guidance of powerful people in their life who are in a position of trust or authority, limiting their autonomy. So, Considering the available information and evidence, point 57, page 17, we believe that it is extremely difficult to ensure that consent in these circumstances is fully informed. Many people have reported consenting to conversion practices without a full awareness of it. The fact that change is not in fact possible. The fact that change is not possible. Well, that's wrong. Change is possible. No one's saying you have to change, but change is possible. So, back to point 12 at the way back at the beginning. As they said change is not possible, and they're saying it again here, change is not possible. And informed consent, so a grown adult who says, right, I want to go to a church group for you know, to want to change my sexual ways. I want to become a married, heterosexual man, raise a family. I don't want to engage in my promiscuous, polyamorous, bisexual existence anymore, for example. Right? I'm not saying that people have to do that, but that may be a person's wish. And so, no, they can't. An adult cannot consent to such an action under this in this document. It's not possible. It's not like a reality that exists. You know, which is highly concerning, because this is the consideration of Convention of Human Rights. Point 65, page 19 in the summary document. Legislation passed by the Scottish Government must be compatible with human rights protected by the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR. In developing the proposals set out in this consultation, we have carefully considered their impact on rights protected by the ECHR, in particular the right to family and private life, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, and freedom of expression. Interference with these rights must be necessary and proportionate to the aim to be achieved, in this case, protection of the rights of LGBTQI plus people. Well, they don't protect the rights of LGBTQI plus people. For example, freedom of thought. Well, freedom of thought, as I mentioned in an earlier page there, the intent, what goes on in one's mind. People are being arrested for praying. Under this bill, will people be arrested for praying silently when it comes to matters of sexual matters? But freedom of religion and conscience and religion, freedom of expression, to express, for example, what's in the Bible regarding sexual sin. And what about adult LGBTQI plus people? If they want to explore sexuality or gender, you know, but they're being told with this document that they haven't got the capacity to reason or use their agency to engage in informed consent, because these people, these activists who've been working on this document, saying that people can't change, but people do change. Now, but this is the very, very interesting thing. They're saying that people can't consent, adults, because there's power dynamics, blah blah blah. But Maggie Chapman in the LBC interview, which I've linked below in my Twitter feed, she's saying we should seriously start considering about how we should help children to change their gender, implying that they can consent to it, and there'll be no issues of power dynamics or coercion involved. See, this is where this document just reeks and screams of an activist with an agenda wanting to socially engineer a society for freedom of conscience, religious expression, informed consent. I mean, I always hark back to a philosopher, and some of his works are great. Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, he was a gay man, and he, interestingly enough, did a lot of work for gay rights through his work. And he had some strange issues with supporting another Frenchman. Him and a lot of other intellectuals signed this document. It's almost like regarded as supporting paedophilia, and there's issues of allegations that he was involved with underage sexual activities. But, a broken clock strikes right twice a day, I suppose. In some of his writings, it was on fearless speech. He wrote in the book called Parrhesia, which is Greek for fearless speech, and he talked about it in terms of historical ancient civilization in Greece, how a mark of civilization was to be able to have fearless speech on matters which may be likely to offend people. That was important for a civilization to do that, because once you take that away, you start to get very totalitarian, and not a very nice society at all. So Michel Foucault was very, very pro the idea of being able to speak fearlessly about sexuality on any matter, whether that offended anyone or not. And I think he was correct in that. Because if people weren't able to speak freely about the gay lifestyle freely, then one would say, well, it'll be repressed. As modern day society shows, for the most part, it's acceptable to express yourself, and talk about these sort of things. Then there doesn't seem to be a big deal. But what this document does is reverse that idea. It's like saying, well, you're not allowed to talk about this. You won't be allowed to voice the idea that you can change or explore in a certain ideological way, like in a Christian faith way. And of course, here's the cut, page 21.73. Summary proposal. Our proposal is to introduce a civil order with the following uses: to protect a specific victim from the harm caused should be caused by an individual, to protect the wider community from the harmful conduct of an individual or organisation. For example, an individual that has previously caused harm to multiple people as a result of conversion practices. Now, an organisation, a Christian church, for example, a very biblically orientated Christian church that adheres to the Scripture and the Bible about sinful sexual practices. Now, of course, no churches are saying that you have to come along and listen to these or abide by them. People are free to pick and choose what they want to do in the world. But this document is going, we will have to protect the society from dangerous individuals or organisations who might, and even in their mind with intent, in their mind, uh, intent with what's in their mind silently. People are walking around with religious ideas in their mind about sexual sin. Perhaps we'll have to protect people from society from these people. And of course, adults can't go along to one of these dangerous organisations and use informed consent and listen and speak and voice what they feel about their life, because because an adult can't consent. Consent is no defence in this document, And it says here on page 21.74, civil orders are preventative and based on risk. There will not need to be evidence that conversion practices have already taken place if there is a specific person or persons to be protected by the order. Instead, there needs to be evidence of a risk of conversion practices taking place and risk of harm to the persons to be protected. So nothing needs to have actually occurred, but a civil order will be based on the risk of such a thing happening. So what if a church has preached on certain parts of the Bible, the scripture in Leviticus, for example, talks about sexual sin? Will that be regarded in a risk assessment as a dangerous organisation? And even though no one has been harmed by it, and people who've went along and listened to these services or the pastor talking about sexual sin, what happens then? Or what happens to a therapist who has a group therapy group? People who are questioning their sexual lifestyle, they're polyamorous, bisexual, heterosexual, asexual, believe they're a woman, a man, or whatever, and they have a group therapy and they're talking about this and exploring, and someone gets, and people have been offended by what a therapist has said. I think, and it goes on, civil orders consideration. They're really hardcore. They're getting hardcore here. Breaching a conversion practices civil order. So if they get a civil order placed on them, an organisation. Point 80, page 23. We believe that there must be a criminal penalty for breaching a civil order. This will ensure that they are effective as a deterrent, therefore working towards our overall goal of ending conversion practices in Scotland. In line with other existing legislation, this is point 81, which contains civil orders, we propose the following sentencing range for breaching a conversion practices civil order. So if a church doesn't cease and desist from talking about sexual sin or anything like that, summary conviction, imprisonment for a period not exceeding 12 months, a fine not exceeding the statutory maximum or both. On conviction or indictment, solemn procedure, a sentencing of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years, a fine or both. And of course, this is not just related to churches or even counselling or anything like that. This is related to parents, because it goes into point 87, page 23, civil orders considerations. We believe that if the facts and circumstances of an act of conversion practice can be demonstrated, a local authority or other person will be able to obtain a child protection order. So, they have the trans guidance in schools. If a child, very impressionable young child, believes that they are a different gender, like Maggie Chapman believes can happen, and they change their name and they start wearing different clothes, like they're a boy and they wear a girl's clothes, or a girl and they wear a boy's clothes at school, and the teacher encourages this. The parent finds out, says, hey, I don't want this to be encouraged. There's more going on here than meets the eye. Protection order slapped on the parents. It's a very, very concerning document. It seems like it's basically an attack on the state impinging on parents, on organisations like churches, kind of counselling, psychotherapy organisations, which may use exploration of sexuality. But the big thing for me is the idea that an adult can't use informed consent. And the biggest thing is that they're excluding people. They're excluding people in their whole conversation, in their whole research for this document. I don't know how much it cost the taxpayer to fund these activists to produce this, because it's contra the human rights legislation that I quoted there. Because it's quite clear in society some people do change. No one's asking anyone to change. People can live how they like and want to live. But they're excluding that possibility that in the state explicitly that no change can happen. But it's ironic because they're quite clear that people can change gender. Children can change gender and they can consent. Frankly, I'm going to stop because I've been ranting for nearly 40 minutes now. There should be an investigation, an independent investigation into how this document was contrived. Because it's very clear it's not unbiased or impartial. They are not considering the human rights and religious and freedom of conscience under human rights legislation. They are infantilizing the LGBTQI plus community, because that's what they're basically saying to them is that, you know what, we are the overlords of what is safe and good in society, and you are unable to consent. But all the other legislation in the background, in the sex education in the schools, it's all about children can consent to bloody anything. They can consent to a 5-year-old can consent to Mary Black coming into the school with a drag queen who has a very, very dubious X-rated pornographic website. There's something seriously wrong in the Scottish government to allow this paper, this waste paper that's cost the taxpayer a lot of money that people are paying into, these activists, to produce this fiction of reality, because people do change and people can use their informed consent. This isn't the mark of a civilized society. Michel Foucault, a gay man, will be turning in his grave. Michel Foucault was a very forward-thinking man. These activists are not talking for the LGBTQI plus community. They're not speaking for them. They're pushing a totalitarian agenda to have more control on people's thinking and thoughts and conscience and religious beliefs in society. That is all it seems to be. And criminalising them for it. Was there anything else I wanted to say about it? Look, I might do another video on this. I don't know, but well, that was one thing. Yes, well, the trans agenda in schools. There was a document, trans guidance for schools. I wrote about it on my WordPress site. It was a document, and in the initial document which was produced, which was signed off by the Scottish Greens, the SNP, other groups, LGBT Youth Scotland, etc., etc., it included resources for a book called Beyond Magenta. And Beyond Magenta, in that book, there was descriptions of a 6-year-old boy giving oral sex to old men. Now, how did this pass to censor. Well, I pointed it out. It was taken out after I complained, and other people complained. But then it was put back in, and then it was taken out again, and put back in and taken out 2 or 3 times. It was almost like someone was taking the piss in the Scottish Government. Now, with the gender recognition bill flopped, the trans guidance in schools, dubious resources that are included, and now this, conversion practices. There's something seriously sick going on in the Scottish Government. As I said, Michel Foucault, one of the most famous gay men philosophers, I think he'd be turning in his grave about this. Make no mistake, these people are totalitarians trying to control society, including the LGBTQI plus community. They're no friend of them. You know, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, even committed communists get sent to the Gulag. You know, and they're coming for everyone, no matter what colour, race, creed, sexuality. They're coming for everything. A totalitarianism umbrella that will encompass everyone. You know, I mean, look at the permanent powers that the Scottish Government hold regarding COVID and contamination and quarantine, etc., etc. You know, they shout refugees welcome, but these refugees that are coming to this country, you know, genuine refugees who come from war-torn countries, coming into a government who wants to impose medical fascism on them. That doesn't sound like much of a welcome. Yes, there's much sickness in the Scottish Government, but till next time, take care.